I just took a couple of pictures of my philodendron silver sword. So I just wanted to hop on here and talk a little bit about these plants and kind of give you a funny story to them as to how I ended up with so many of these. Let me move out the way. But before I get ready to get into that, just want to ask you all, how's your day going? And if you have any questions, please put them down there so I can answer them. We in here, we talking about everything from plants to life to current events, whatever. Um, no political stuff and all of that. I just want to just keep it a happy, just page, all live. All right. Yeah, I have to get better with time management. You know, it used to just be me, whatever I'll be doing my own channel and so forth, so I can kind of do what I wanted to with my time. Now, since I have to take the business time into consideration with social events and so forth, it's like, where do I find the time? So I have to learn how to be able to batch record. So what I'm doing right now is just getting a couple of pictures that I want to be able to post this week. And that's the thing is, I'm used to taking a picture, recording a video, instantly editing, uploading, and boom, it's done. Well, I have to get smarter about spacing that out and actually putting out some really good stuff that I feel like people will really want to just know, especially for people who may follow me as a person to see how these plants are really doing, and some are just to look at the cool plants. But um, I was gonna wait to get a couple of people in here, so I'm just not talking to myself. But I guess we can go ahead and start off, and if anybody want to go back and take a look at the video, they can. Right now, I want to start talking about the philodendron silver sword and how I got this. Well, I bought this plant, the very first one, I think offline, and then the second one I bought from just like a nursery or so forth. Both of them died. Okay, so I kind of just had my pride. Everything was just hurt. I was like, I'm not gonna mess around with this plant anymore. So one of my friends on Instagram, she said, just try it again. You never know. They're a very easygoing plant. I'm like, oh, whatever. But she is pretty good with plants, so for her to tell me that, I'm gonna trust her at her word. Well, I went to my local grocery store, Lowe's, and I bought one. That one I bought is this one right here. This is my oldest one. I've had this one for about 2 years now. Placed in the bathroom, it gets no grow light. What I've learned, both my philodendron silver swords did not like the grow light I used to provide for them. I know it wasn't too close, and I don't know what other effects caused it to just not like it. But no grow lights for these plants. I just put them close to the window, and the light that comes through the window is not even bright. It really is just very just mid kind of dimmy type light, and they seem to do pretty good with this. I think it maybe has something to do with their color or so forth. I don't know, but if you can see, they have like a blue green tint to them. They are absolutely beautiful. They really are. Um, what I did for a couple of these was put them in self-watering containers. That really changed the game for me. Unfortunately, like the big pot that's back there, I haven't saved enough money up to be able to get these plants into some bigger self-watering containers. I think that they do really good with that. Now the monsteras is still on a fence. When they're juvenile, they do pretty good in those self-watering containers that you get if you buy them from like the big box stores and so forth, because I loved it. I did not want to have to repot my plants from it. Being able to have that, give that monstera the water when it needed it, just made everything a lot easier for me. However, when it came time to repot, I didn't have the pots. Now, I could have went and bought a couple of pots, but when I do repots, I prefer to do a lot of repots at the same time, like multiple ones. It's just easier to do all. So I want to make sure I have all the pots to correctly do it. Now, I'm not going to do any repotting for these next couple of months. Not that I'm scared to do it in the sense of if a plant needs to be repotted, I will do it. I just don't do repotting because the plants usually do tend to slow down a little bit and become dormant just off of natural causes. Now, I do believe that since I run my room the same way all year round, like during those seasons, I don't believe my room is affected that much. However, I just don't like to repot plants during these cold, cooler months. I just don't. I love going outside on a step, being able to do the repot and just enjoy the sunlight and so forth. But yeah, so How did I get with so many of these? I don't know if you can see them there, but we have one, two, three, four, five. I have a sixth one back here that you probably didn't know. And this one is probably one of my coolest grows so far. Now, when I did some cutting on one of these plants, I believe it's the one that I have on the floor here. Um, it just started looking real ugly, and I was like, ugh, I'm just gonna start over. So I cut them, and I cut them at its nodes. I don't know if you can see those inside of here, but this is what I'm talking about, a good propagation for you to be able to use if you're doing something like your philodendrons. Get you some moss, and I have some perlite in here. These are the two things that I used. I made sure I kept them moist, and then I just refill them with water every time that they get dry. It works really good, okay? And that's just propagating. You can do all of your philodendrons like that. If you can get them at that node and you just get behind there where that little bump is at, put them in that sphagnum moss and that perlite, and you'll do all right with it. But this is probably the most coolest one that I'm growing because I'm actually growing this one all the way from scratch. So it's like, wow, I really have the philodendron sword master. At least that's what I think. Anything could happen. I told you all my luck. Every time I start to brag on a plant, that's when it turns around and starts to not give me good results. So, um, let's talk about, we talked about the light. So the light can be kind of dim, and just give it as much light as you can by the window. I mean, there's no preference of that. The more the better. Next is the soil. So all of these plants in here, except for two of them. Now, two of them are actually still in its growers preferred when I bought it. The reason why is this. They do like to keep their moisture in there, and they'll do pretty good if the humidity stays the same. Now, I've noticed that when these plants are just these, I'm talking about the swords in general, when I have them in a room, like in an environment like this, I think that the air is so windy and so forth that it stresses the plant out a little bit more. Now, I'm not used to philodendrons being a plants that get stressed out. That's why I like them, because they're easy. But this one specifically, I noticed that I just had problems when it was in this room. Immediately after moving it just to the bathroom, and that's where I kept it at, it started doing good. And that whole humidity thing, like, these are, I guess we could say, are getting a greenhouse effect because they stay in the bathroom. And the bathroom gets, that humidity comes in right there by the shower. It comes right over there, that steam, and that's where they sit at. And they freaking love it. I had moved this plant into the office, and something just didn't feel right. It was just like I moved it out of the tub, because that's why I have them all bunched in. If you follow my Instagram stories, then I'm usually at some point in time, at least once every 2 weeks, I usually do just a walk around on a plant. So definitely follow that if you're interested in seeing these plants and a lot of the other plants. I just do that a little bit more. I'm gonna try to do more in here too as well, now since I'm getting used to hitting the live button. But yeah, so this plant I had in the office, and I just felt wrong. I felt like I took it out of its thriving environment just to put it there, just to be cool. At the time, I was like, well, since I'm in the office all the time, I'll make sure I'm able to make sure it's getting the thing it needs. But it just felt out of place. So until it gets too big that I have to move it, then I will. Let's talk about the soil though. For the most part, the soil that I use is a chunky mix. Although I do put a little bit more indoor pot mix in there as well, kind of like a monstera. If you're able to give a really good light and a really good humidity, then you can use things that have a little bit more peat moss or that can retain moisture a little bit longer. Now, if you have room that is airy, it flows like most of the parts of the house, you definitely want to use that airy mix, because humidity doesn't exist that well. Therefore, your plant just gets a little bit more stressed. I don't know how to break it down any more than that, but if you have it in a nice humid place, they like to retain that moisture without overwatering as much as possible. But if you don't have them in a real tight humidity space, then you do have to worry about overwatering, because that water just sits in those roots a little bit longer than they should, which is why we have a lot more root rot. So, I like to use the airy mix. We want to go with our perlite, our orchid bark, and a tropical pot and mix or indoor pot and mix. Use some horticulture charcoal. That's just for good measure. That helps some with pests, so I heard. I don't know if it's prevented, but I don't have a pest outbreak, so maybe there is some truth to that. When it comes to the watering, let them dry out before you water them again, unless you have them in your self-watering containers. And if you have them in a good humidity space, I would say when it gets about, it'll get down to about like 30%. When you have a mix that has a lot of like peat moss and so forth in it, when it starts drying out, it becomes more sponge-like, and you can't necessarily poke your finger inside of there. But it's hard, but you just have to weigh it in order to know that it needs watering. But there'll be little signs of it. Now, I feel like a plant can go longer in a high humidity without water, almost to the point that you barely have to water your plants when they're in a high humid condition. I water these plants a lot less than I water these plants. So that's just something to keep in mind there. As far as expense, these plants are not expensive. I pay, every time I go to the grocery store, I pay $14.99 for them. So that's usually about the price. And guys, I really think that that's about all that I have to talk about our philodendron silver swords. Yeah. I'm going to check to make sure I didn't have any questions or comments. I don't think I did. Nope. All right. Okay. Well, then you all have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. Oh, how do I hit that?